Welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. I get the feeling that Photoshop's bridge is often sidestepped by some Photoshop users. I think perhaps they concentrate more on learning the wonders of Photoshop and Camera Raw, and that's all quite understandable. But bridge does have quite a lot to offer. What I've done here is to put together 5 of my favourite bridge options, the ones that I use myself. The number one favourite option from bridge for me is simply browsing and labelling my images. This is where I can look through my thumbnails to choose what images I want to edit, either now or later in Adobe Camera Raw. We know that if we go down to the bottom right, we can increase the thumbnail size with the slider. But did you know that if you hit the spacebar with any selected thumbnail, it'll open up full screen? And then if I use my cursor control keys, those arrows on the bottom right of the keyboard, I can scroll between each of the images and look at them far larger than I'm able to as thumbnails. And at any time, I can hit the escape key and just come back out. One of the options that we have within Bridge as we browse the images, either as we're looking at them now or via that spacebar key when we're looking at them large on screen, is I can hit the control key and I can hit the number 6. And what I've got is a label that's appeared down at the bottom left corner. So if I use my cursor control keys to the right and I use Control 7, you can see we've moved from a red label to a yellow label. Let's move on to Control 8, which gives me a green, and if we move on again to Control 9, we get a blue label. You can actually apply a mauve label as well, but we can only do that by right-clicking the thumbnail within Bridge. Let me touch the escape key and you'll notice that the coloured labels that I've applied remain, of course, with the thumbnails. Now we can use these labels, or we can use the star system that you can see on the bottom left corner of each of the thumbnails as we highlight them, and we can apply them with keystrokes. With the stars, it's simply the 1 to 5 keys with the control, so Control 3 for example, and you see that that blue flagged image has 3 stars attached. I can hit the number 4, the number 5. If I hit Control 0, it removes them all, but we can also just click on that little no entry sign, which will remove them. We can remove a coloured label in exactly the same way as we applied it. The keyboard shortcut will act as a toggle. Hit it once and it'll turn on the coloured label, hit it again and it'll turn off. So here I applied the blue label with Control 9, so Control 9 will remove it. If I want to remove coloured labels from a number of images, then I can just select them all. And I've only got 3 here, but it could be considerably more, of course. Right click, choose label, no label, and they're all removed. I'm going to display all of the shortcut keys for the stars and the coloured flags, but in practice I find I only use 2 coloured flags, red and green, for obvious reasons. Red denotes that the image is maybe not sharp enough, green is a potential for further editing. Now, one of the great things about coloured labels that I like is when I hit that spacebar and I go through my images and I think, well, this has the potential, so I'm going to give this a green label. I can go through any of my images. I quite like that one too, so I'm okay to give that a green label. But I can come back sometimes days later, and if I just want to show the labelled images, if I touch my escape key and I go to the top right here, I can just choose to show just labelled items only, and that is very convenient. Now, to remove that search option just for flagged items, I can go back to the same option, Filter Items by Rating is the correct title, and I can clear the filter. But as you can see, I can sort them by labelled items only, unlabelled items, and all of the stars. So here I'll just clear the filter and I'm back to my main Bridge screen. Another option within Bridge for browsing and sorting images is something called Review Mode. I don't use it very often, but when I do, it's invaluable. And we've got a good example here. As you can see, I've got a number of images of the red panda. If I wanted to select one of these to move forward with a manipulation, I can select the first of those, hold the shift and select the last of those. Then I can go to my refine mode, you'll find it up at the top left, and I can select review. Review mode allows us to quickly skip through a number of images and select the one or ones we want. If you look down at the extreme right corner of the screen, you can see an arrow to the right which will take us to the next image. There's an equivalent arrow on the bottom left corner to take us back the other way. In the center of the screen we can zoom in just a little bit, but we also have a down arrow which would remove any image we don't want in the review mode. And we also have a little briefcase which is a collection, but I'm going to deal with that as a separate topic. If you look up at the top right of the screen, you also have a little cross where you can come out of this screen back into Bridge. But I like to use keystrokes because it's far more convenient. Using the cursor control keys, if I use the keys to the right, I can scroll to the right and I get to view each of the images in turn. If I get to an image which I don't think I'm going to want to keep within the review mode, I can use the down arrow, and it's the equivalent of that arrow you can see center bottom. And all I've just done is to remove that image from review mode. I've not removed it from my computer, it's still sitting there safe in Bridge. Here's another one. I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to remove that one. That one's a nice one, so I'll keep that for a moment and skip to the next. That's a nice one. This one, not so keen on. No, not so keen on that one. Let's take that one out, that one out, that one out, and that one out. And I don't want any upright pictures. No, not too keen on that one. So when we get down to just 4, you can see exactly how Photoshop shows them to us. You can see which one is selected by the fact that the name of the file is highlighted. In fact, I'm going to hit the right arrow again and scroll across to the bottom right corner and remove that one. So there I've got the 3 images I want to finally choose from. So it's a great way of working, and on top of everything else, we can apply labels. So if I wanted to apply Control 8 to that one at the top left and then skip to the one on the top right and do the same thing again, I can do that should I want to come back later. But if I touch the Escape key, you can see we're back into Bridge, and just the 3 images we've selected have the green labels. Easy to find next time. And of course, the whole point of all of this browsing and sorting is so that at some stage we can select one image, double click, and have that open up in Adobe Camera Raw. From time to time, we're almost certain as photographers to want to gather together a batch of images for a photographic project. Now, the problem with that is that the images could be stored within many different folders or even on different drives, both internal and external. Collections in Adobe's Bridge is the way we can do this. It's a very fast process and convenient too. Let's take a look. Now there's 2 collection options, but I'd like to sidestep Smart Collections because I believe what we're about to look at in the standard selection option is going to meet all of our needs. Now you'll notice here that I've already got a thumbnail highlighted in Bridge. So when I go down to the icons, there's the Smart Collection icon. There's the one we want. When I click that, Photoshop says, do you want to include the file that I've got highlighted? Well, I can say yes to that, and then I can change the name of my collection or just accept whatever's been presented. I'll just accept New Collection to start with, and I'll touch the Enter key. And now, of course, because we had that thumbnail selected, we're just viewing what's in our collection. And I want to go back to the folder I was previously selecting from to gather some more images. If we use the back arrow up at the top left of the screen, we're immediately back into the previous folder. Now with collections, we have the opportunity to just click and drag images or video one at a time. But if we have the need and we see a group of images that we want, we can highlight them all and click, drag and drop those into our new collection. I can switch to another folder. And as I said in my introduction, I could switch to another drive as well. So I could suggest that we just click around and select the images that we want for this particular project. Click, drag and drop. Now we can have this new collection sitting there for as long as we require it. But of course, if we've got a photographic project that we're working on, then we're very likely to want to go to the new collection, highlight everything within that group, Control A will do that. Then we can use the right click and copy all of those images to a new location. Now at the moment the images or the thumbnails are not copies, they're just being referenced from the same folder we clicked, dragged and dropped them from. It's not until I right click and I choose to copy to or copy and paste somewhere that they become actual copies. So that's an important point of this process. Now once we want to remove images from a collection, if I just wanted to remove an individual image, if I decided that this one down here didn't fit my needs, I can just highlight that and click to remove it from the collection. But if I wanted to remove the entire collection, I can go down to the bottom left, select the collection because we could have a number of them here, and just hit the bin, and they've all been removed and we can move on from here. Now remember that briefcase icon we saw in review mode? Well, once we've used review mode and we're left with the images we want, let's assume I've gone through 50 or 60 images and this is the batch of images that I require. Then all I need to do is to click on the briefcase icon down at the bottom left. Now when I do that, we go straight into the collection option, and again we're given the opportunity to give this a name or just accept the one given by touching the Enter key. The one important thing to remember about collections is never to delete a thumbnail using the delete key, because if you do that you are in fact deleting them from your computer. So if I selected this image and rather than going up to the top right to remove it from my collection, if I hit the delete key, then I'm afraid I'm deleting that thumbnail. So that's an important point when you're working in collections. But if we just bear in mind that all of these thumbnails are not duplicates when they're in a collection, they're just being referenced from the original location, then of course that all makes perfect sense. Now there's always going to be times when detailed and precise image editing via Adobe Camera Raw is what we want, but not always. So how can we manipulate 10 images or 100 images or maybe even 500 in one go using Bridge? Now there's going to be those times when we've taken a batch of images in the same or in similar conditions. Now in that case we only really need to edit just one image and then we can transfer those settings to the rest. Now that leaves us with the freedom to shoot raw, but avoid detailed one at a time editing if the images don't warrant that level of attention. Now here I've sorted out a batch of images all shot at the same location. The first thumbnail, top left, has been adjusted through Camera Raw, and you'll notice I've used my green label to help me sort these images. Now the way this works is we open up just one of our batch of images and we make any changes we wish to make. I've made quite a few here. I've adjusted the temperature, quite a number of different changes using the sliders under the basic tab, and in fact if I go to my graduated filter, you'll notice I've added a graduated filter just to the top right, and I've also added a circular filter too, just to vignette the image a little bit. So once I've completed all of the changes I want to make, rather than opening the object or the image up into Photoshop, I'm just going to click Done. And all that does is to commit those changes to the thumbnail, and we'll see them in Bridge, but it's not opened directly into Photoshop. So when we're back in Bridge, we can highlight the image we've just adjusted, right click and select Develop Settings and Copy Settings. Then if I select the first of the images I want to copy those settings to, hold the Shift key and select the last, both the first, the last and all in between will be selected. Then I can right click, choose Develop Settings and Paste Settings. Now this window is Photoshop's way of asking us if we want to use all of the settings that we applied to the first image. In this case we do, and in fact we want to add to them. By default it doesn't usually add graduated or radial filters because generally they're more destined for individual editing. But here I'm going to select them. I applied a graduated filter and what I called a circular filter. The correct term of course is the radial filter, but it amounts to the same thing. And when I click OK, we'll see those settings be applied to every one of those thumbnails in just a few seconds. Now we can use this method and accept these bulk changes in full, but of course it doesn't prevent us from using this method as a preset, and then we could adjust the odd image further from there if we have that need. Thumbnail details are my fourth choice. This is the information we see below each image when we view them in Bridge. Our thumbnails in Bridge can display 4 lines of information, 5 if you include the file name. But we have quite a number of options of what we can include in each of those 4 lines. Let's take a look. So we need to go to our Edit menu, top left of the screen, choosing Preferences and then Thumbnails. Here's the options that we're looking for. We can tick the box and they'll appear. You see them appear instantly to the right of this panel. And there I've just ticked to show dimensions. Let's have a look at date created, focal length and exposure. So you need to select those that are important to you. But within each of those 4 options, we can choose any one of those as well. A lot of option here, but I generally find personally that I like the dimensions and the date created, and the rest I like to keep clean. But supposing we choose dimensions, date created, focal length and exposure, and we turn all of these off, but we tick this box and click OK, then whenever we mouse over any of the thumbnails, we'll get the panel appear. The only downside, of course, is it only appears for a short while and then disappears, and if we didn't read all the information we wanted, we'd have to move the mouse. So, as usual with Photoshop, lots of preferences we've got here, and you just choose the ones that you feel are most appropriate. Did you know that you can use Adobe's Bridge as a lightbox to drag and drop and sort images and then rename them accordingly? A very useful option. Now, I think most of the time when I use Bridge as a lightbox, I tend to be working on copies of my images, and that's what I'm doing here. But it's a fairly simple process to do the sorting. If I want this image to come up or to be seen second after this one, you can see I can just click, drag and drop and move any of these images into any positions that I like. I'm doing them one at a time, but of course if I see a number of them that I like, I can move them in bulk as well. Once I've got the images in order, maybe we want to display them in this order, then we need to select all, Control A, right click, and we're going to use Batch Rename. Now there's one thing you cannot say about Photoshop. You cannot say they don't give you plenty of options. What the Batch Rename window does as well is it will always remember the last time you were working in it and what choices you made. So we can add a number of different options when we think about renaming. Let's keep this fairly simple because I think there's more here than most of us are ever going to need. I'm going to pick up the first option, and from all of these options I'm going to choose text, which is already in the box. So I can decide exactly what's going to show in front of a number. So if I did want to put my full name or the title of the website, I could write it in there. I'll leave a space as well. Now we can add and remove options. So here I can hit the plus. I can decide that after my name, I can choose a sequence number, a sequence letter, date, time, all sorts of things, but a sequence number seems logical. I even get the opportunity to choose 1 digit, 2, 3, 4, 5. See what I mean about options? Let's stay with 3 digits, which seems a nice midway point, and of course we get to choose where the numbering starts. Then when I click Rename, they're all done for us. Now, as is often the case when we're doing work like this, we decide a little bit later to go and get another half a dozen images. So give me a second and I'm going to drop another half a dozen images into this folder. So with 6 more images copied into that folder, I can select them, click drag and drop to sort them into any order that I want. But once I'm happy with that order, I can select all 6, right click and choose Batch Rename. And what we'll notice here is that it automatically remembers the text I was using. It picks up the fact that last time the count went to 21 and it's automatically setting the next sequence to 22. Pretty clever, pretty quick and efficient. Now I didn't dwell very long on this Batch Rename window a few moments ago because there's so much within it we could spend a whole video just talking about the options. For example, we can set up our own presets here. We can choose to rename in the same folder. We can move the files to another folder or copy them to another folder. So my idea of copying the files, then sorting and then actually renaming is not necessary. We can do that copying to another folder with a simple tick of the box. And we can add as many of these options as we want because I can add a plus and add something that's going to follow the sequence number if I needed to do that. Plus 1 or 2 other options too. So I think perhaps that Adobe's Bridge and what it can do for us photographers is sometimes overlooked just a little bit. I'll see you next time.